I like to do a book review. Somebody sent me on a quote from a book last week, and I asked, well, where is this quote from? And it's from a book called Letters to a Soul by a monk, Humbert van Zeller. And I'm just going to read through a bit about this book. A young man, a painter, having converted, he tries his vocation as a monk, but decides that monastic life is not for him. Thrown back on his own resources, he quickly becomes enmeshed in difficulties, not least when he discovers an unusually sympathetic ear in a young married woman, and he struggles to find a place in the contemporary church. Throughout his searching, he turns to a Benedictine monk, Dom Humbert, for counsel, wondering what to do with his feelings. Dom Humbert, also an artist, offers practical advice to his correspondent while astutely pinpointing his mistakes. Not only fascinating are as a historical snapshot of the world of 1975, though through the eyes of a widely travelled monk, these letters, full of wish and insight, address many topics which remain pertinent today, including seeking peace and balance in the life of the spirit, progress in prayer, and the danger of self-absorption, chastity and the difference between romance, love and friendship, papal infallibility, obedience in the church, and the crisis of religious vocations, liturgical aesthetics, the charismatic movement and the Latin Mass, the fear that God is not enough to satisfy man. So that's the book. It's called Letters to a Soul, and it's published by Senecal Press. And I'll put a link to the book below. I just find it interesting, these type of books that kind of because they I have never heard of this writer. I didn't know about him, and I just thought the quotes were interesting. But I'm just going to read you through one of the letters, and I think many people, I mean, if this is why I go back, if you go back to a few videos ago, we kind of need an apprenticeship of to know how to pray, to understand how to pray. You know, I had this, there was one moment in prayer. I was on Loch Derg, and it was the day after the vigil, and I was up there looking over the lake, and just to know God is there in prayer. I don't care about the distractions, or if you're feeling frustrated or you don't hear anything. I didn't get any mess, didn't know it, but just to know He's present in prayer. That's all I needed to know, that Christ is present in prayer. And it was like this beautiful moment. I don't know what I'm getting out of this prayer, but God knows. God knows. And then I was reading this letter 51 in this book, and I'm just going to read you through because I just thought it was so beautiful. And I think a lot of people are going to find benefit reading this book, because it's a monk writing to a layman. So I do recommend people buy this book, and I'm still recommending Praying with the Heart. Please buy this book by Jean Curry. I've blogged about it so many times. Very short book, as is this book. It's only 100 pages long. You'll read it in a day or a few days. So I'll just go through letter 51. I just thought this was beautiful. Dear X, you tell me that the attraction is there for the silent prayer of waiting upon God, but that when you try it, either nothing happens or you are invaded by distractions. Well, what did you expect? So long as the attraction isn't invaded by doubts and the desire to go back to a more talkative prayer, the thing to do is to follow it and not be discouraged by the fact that nothing seems to happen, or that distractions seem to spoil the whole thing. The reason why nothing seems to happen, is that God has taken over the control of your prayer and is not letting you see what He is doing. If you were to see His work, you would want to interfere with it. You would think you knew better. So of course He has to work secretly. Look at it from His point of view. His object is twofold. First, to keep you there, trying to pray in spite of what is apparently a waste of time, particularly when you are leaving yourself apparently wide open to distractions. Secondarily, to transfer the whole undertaking from the natural to the supernatural. The second purpose could not be achieved if you were able to follow the process. So, what God does is to freeze your mind and operate at a level which you cannot appreciate. At the surface level, He allows distractions to bother you, but in fact, they are only bothering you and are doing you no harm. Distractions are harmful only when they are deliberately followed up. I'm sure I must have told you this before. In any case, you must have read it in a dozen books. If after giving this kind of simple prayer a chance for quite a considerable time, you still find you cannot manage to be at peace in it, then it might be as well to practice the Jesus prayer a bit, repeating it over and over again. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, on my soul. Or just breathing out the holy name so that you are waiting to pray and refusing to go to sleep. The whole point of prayer, the whole point of the prayer of faith, which is this simple regard prayer, obviously is persevering in a knowledge which you do not understand and a love that you do not feel. The title of one of the best books ever written about prayer should teach you this: The Cloud of Unknowing. Conviction has to take the place of devotion. A man standing at the foot of Snowdon knows that there must be a summit to the mountain, but he does not see it because it is shrouded in mist. He acts on the fact when he starts climbing. You may feel tired even in the foothills. You may feel cold as he gets near to the top. He will be wrapped in mist for most of the time, but what matters is that he goes up. His purpose is weakened if he is constantly turning around and looking back. He will be tempted to try a smaller mountain, to choose a route that will take him by car almost to the top. But if he is a climber and wants to do the thing in style, he plods along in an upward direction and refuses alternative options. Try reading The Cloud, also the Scale of Perfection, and Dame Julian's Revelations of Divine Love. When you have read those, come back for more. Continue, as Belloc makes God the Father say after inspecting the affairs of earth. Signed, Dom. So that's letter 51. Sorry if I read it out a bit strangely. There was a piece in brackets here. It says up here, the whole point of prayer of faith, which this simple regard prayer obviously is persevering in a knowledge which you do not understand and a love that you do not feel. Just thought it was a very practical, beautiful book, and he's actually quoting some other books you can read. So I do recommend you buy this small book. It's called Letters to a Soul by Humbert van Zeller. And and it kind of reminds me of that point. We often go into prayer looking for something out of that prayer, and oftentimes nothing happens. I spent years praying in a seminary and nothing happened, literally. Apart from that first experience when I asked Christ, do you love me? And I had that audible voice, not an interior voice, an audible voice. Of course I love you. And then I spent 9 years not hearing him. Literally nothing in prayer. Nothing. Like, I was always drawn to the Eucharist. I loved praying, but I didn't get anything out of it. Like at the time. Now, obviously, as God had a plan in all of this. Like, I loved the Mass, I loved the Eucharist, I was always drawn. I'm always drawn to sacred spaces to pray. I would always feel drawn to the Eucharist, but I didn't get anything out of prayer. Very very little. That's how I used to see it, and I used to get really 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 frustrated about it. And oftentimes you hear spiritual directors and people telling you about this. And I suppose it's interesting to hear about others' experiences in prayer, because you can get frustrated, and think that there's nothing there. What's the point? Now, I do look back and I wish I had approached it in a different way, but I suppose that was the training ground that God provided for me. And we progress forward and we learn more. But the older I get, and I will say this to the day I die, and I hope they write it on my tombstone: prayer is the greatest proof of God's existence. Prayer is the greatest proof of God's existence. And that prayer that the monk is talking about, the Jesus prayer, Hesychast prayer, from the East. So I tattooed it on my arm here. Kyrie Jesu Christe ute teu, eleison me ton amartalon. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. And it's a prayer when you don't know how to pray. You just pray with the heart. Pray breathing in that prayer. Very simple prayer. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. A beautiful, beautiful prayer. And sometimes it's the most simple prayers that feed us the most. But the beautiful, the realization I had in Lochderg, just knowing he's there, just knowing, that's all I need to know, that you're there. I don't need you to say anything. I don't need to hear anything or know anything. Just to know his presence is there. That is the greatest thing of prayer for me. Just knowing God is there when I go to pray. That's it. Just to have that knowledge, just to know, okay, you're there. You're not saying anything to me. You're not doing anything today, apparently, from our human point of view. But God has a plan for us, and he wants us to come to us. Maybe we don't get anything out of prayer, but God gets a lot out of prayer when we give our heart to him. You can go to pray. I guarantee you, if you do this in prayer and just go into prayer and says, and with all the distractions, because I've heard there's so many, Lord, here's my heart and here are my distractions. Take them, and I'll stay here with you in prayer. That's the beautiful thing about the Eucharist. And so I do encourage people, if you want to deepen your life of prayer, make a sacred space. I love my mini chapel here. I'll just show you. I love my mini chapel. This statue. Let me focus in on this statue here. This statue I bought in a monastery, and it has probably been one of the most beautiful statues I've ever bought, and it's wood. It's made by the Bethlehem community, and I bought it just before the pandemic. And whenever I'm leaving, I always give a kiss to Our Lady on the head, a hug, and heaven is real, heaven is near us, and that's why make our places sacred. Make your places where you're going to pray sacred. It's an awful pity we have these bland. It's an awful pity we have these bland chapels now that we go into, and the statues have been removed, and it's been like nearly whitewashed, and sanctuaries and altar rails and all this. I mean, make the place where you pray sacred, because it's where you encounter Christ. It's where you encounter God, his presence, especially if the Eucharist is present. Anyway, I think I go on too much, but I was just I just thought the book was excellent, and I'm just going to give a plug for it, and thank the person that sent me the quote from this book. They got my curiosity picked, and there's lots of stuff in this book. He's quoting other books, so I just think it's good that we do it and persevere in prayer. It's a lot of people. I went through 9 years of a seminary and not really feeling anything in prayer. No, not really. Not really getting anything from prayer at all. Especially meditation. And we used to have an hour of meditation in the morning in my room, and I can tell you, I got nothing from it, ever. I would just struggle there. I just couldn't get anything out of it. And not that I didn't just like it. I prefer praying in front of the Blessed Eucharist, but that was just me at the time. But I was always attracted to the sacred, to the Mass. I would get a lot more in the prayer of the Mass. I used to love daily Mass, and said reverently, quiet preparation. I saw all of the commentary about that priest waking people up for Mass in the World Youth Day, and a back and forth, and the priest is a trad priest really, and is this, that, and what people are thinking. And without judging them, when we're preparing for our sacred mysteries, which is the Mass, the sacrifice of the Mass, there's so much music and ways of preparing ourselves. But I've yet to see a DJ up at the area where we're going to prepare for Mass as a way for preparing for Mass. I don't know. Maybe young people just think it's cringe. When we conform to their likings and lifestyles, and other people say, "Oh, it's fine, it's okay." I don't know. I just think if you want to hear God's voice, you do need a bit of silence. God speaks in the silence. He can't speak in the distractions of our life. And if you're in prayer and you have the mobile phone out and you're checking stuff, I get caught in this. God can't speak if we're not focusing, at least trying to focus on prayer, on Christ. And so that's why it's important to make space for Him in our lives. And sometimes you won't hear much or anything, because I didn't. But prayer is the greatest proof of God's existence. So please persevere in it, and allow God to do the transforming in our souls. Because when we go into prayer, He's shining the light on us. He's purifying us. You're giving your heart. You said, "Lord, I'm here. I give you my heart." And Christ said, "Wow, you've given me the only thing that I can work with, which is your heart, your will, your fiat, your yes." You're giving that to God, and God takes it in His hands and He says, "Let me work with you." And it might take a year, it might take 10 years, it might take 50 years, it might take a day. Who knows? God works in different ways with different souls, but He wants that conscious effort of you to give your fiat, your yes, your heart, your soul into prayer, and then He can start working with you. And if we're not doing that, if we're not making time for that, and then our prayer life isn't going in, we have all these distractions, we have all these problems where our life is not going well, what do we expect? So that's why, the only thing that God doesn't have is our heart. And the only way that He can possess that is if we offer it to Him as an oblation, as something for Him to work with. So that's what is important to do. Anyway, recommend this book, Letters to a Soul. I just think it's an inspiring book, and please buy it. It's a good book. God bless you. Take care. Bye-bye.